Hi, my name is Daniel White Hodge, and I'm a professor here at North Park University. I have been in higher education for about 16 years, and a lot of my research has been at the intersections of popular culture, religion, and particularly as it pertains to race and ethnicity. One of my current research projects was looking at and investigating hip-hop culture, and particularly looking at how hip-hop culture, beyond the music, actually engages with and intersects with emerging ethnic minority young adult populations. In other words, what does this generation do with hip hop? How do they connect with it, and how do they better understand what hip hop is about, particularly with issues such as racial profiling, the 45th president, racism and police brutality. When you think about places like Ferguson, Missouri, or Baltimore, what comes to mind, particularly when you start thinking about what is the music, what is the culture that is undergirding that? And for a lot of people, they're trying to figure out, what is our response to this? How do we connect? How do we better understand this generation? And some have just written them off. I'm going to make the argument that hip-hop is a post-civil rights space and provides a better understanding and a better space for this generation in particular to better understand not just life, not just society and culture, but also how they connect with a transcendent space and being, in particular as it relates to their own spiritual development and particularly their own religious identity. We're looking at hip-hop as being this kind of space that is able to deal with questions and able to deal with ambiguity and doubt that other spaces are not. Also, there is a strong need for social justice and community within the culture of hip-hop. So let's get going on this, because I know my time is brief with all of y'all. So when people think about hip-hop, most of the times they start thinking about general audiences. They start thinking about folks that honestly, quite honestly, are just clown rappers. Now, I'm not here to put anybody down, but at the same time, I'm also saying that that is not hip-hop. Hip-hop is much broader than what you hear on the radio, what you see in a video. Hip-hop goes beyond that commercialism, which has really been overemphasized over the last really 18 years. And so I'm not talking about this particular modality of hip-hop, even though they may provide a particular substance and corner within our popular culture or mainstream for some people and some viewers. This is not what the culture was about, nor what it was developed for. When I talk about hip-hop, I'm talking about artists like Brother Tupac. All right, I'm talking about when you think about groups like Tribe Called Quest or the Beatniks, or when you think about artists like Kendrick Lamar, all right, or when you think about somebody like a Lauryn Hill, or when you think about somebody like Chance the Rapper, all right, or when you think about Eve, all of these are rappers that I'm talking about that make up the broadness and the complexity of which is hip hop culture. When you think about J. Cole, and Lecrae, right? These are all artists that make the culture big. And we even got Kanye in there. And you say, whoa, wait a minute. Whoa, well, let me be specific. 2003 to 2005. All right, that's the Kanye I'm talking about. But on the real, though, these are just a glimpse of some of the artists that I'm talking about that create this culture of hip-hop. So let me real briefly talk to you real quick about what I mean by the post-civil rights context. This is a generation, particularly when you start thinking about where we're at in society. I have a whole a breakdown in terms of what generations have come up over the last 45, 50 years. And this is, again, part of my research and part of what I've been doing. And so, again, making the argument that hip-hop is a new space to begin to understand even education, that this generation has begun to understand even mathematics, science, technology, all of those things. You can use hip-hop for that. So what do I mean first by post-civil rights? Well, post-civil rights was a youth born, particularly the generation born during a post-soul era context, raised on a transmediated diet, disconnected from previous generations, both locally and ideologically, and currently have non-binary issues to contend with in a post-9/11 society living in a Western context. Now, what do I mean by all that? And essentially, these are young people, particularly born after the year 1999, who have grown up in what I like to define as a post-9/11 America. This generation was raised in the ruins of the Reagan crack cocaine era. The generation raised in the womb of media culture. This generation doesn't know anything but media. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and so she doesn't understand what payphones are. She doesn't. She saw an old school phone that was still connected to a wall, and she said, "Dad, what's that?" So this generation understands these aspects and so much more. So again, hip hop fits right in there. A generation raised in the ambiguity of morals, ethics, and social values. Woo! That's a whole one right there in and of itself. When you begin to understand exactly what is this post-civil rights generation, like what is the ambiguity? What do we do with somebody like the 45th president? What do we do when we have some of the people who we've upheld as primary examples of how to be a moral, righteous person, and even they have fallen short of that mark? Again, a generation born or raised in a post-9/11 America, a generation raised during one of the greatest shifts, in particular, not just Christian faith, but faith in general. A generation raised on technology as normality and identity, and a generation raised on efficiency, calculability, control, effectiveness as social normalities and ways of doing life. In other words, that is the McDonaldization thesis. This generation was raised in that. A generation raised with likes and follows. A generation raised to organize and critically think. A generation seeking Jesus unfiltered and unraw and not religion. So when you start thinking about that, we begin to kind of get into hip-hop and begin to understand the broader context of hip-hop. Well, what do I mean by hip-hop? Let me define hip-hop. The roots of hip-hop, the culture of it, is rooted in consciousness. It's rooted in self-awareness. Is rooted in community, is rooted in spirituality, is rooted in rooted in unity, and is also rooted in the love of God and self. You cannot overlook that. And these are the roots of hip hop. So when I look at somebody on the radio, I generally use this as kind of a barometer, a measuring stick, if you will, to say, are they actually living up to this? Or are they just trying to make money? Good artists, good hip hop artists are actually trying to do this. Good hip hoppers are trying to live these things out. What does that self-awareness mean? How do we live in this age where racism has become almost this conscious social thing, right? In our society, the irony of that, right? Well, again, hip-hop, this is how I define hip-hop, is an urban subculture that seeks to express a lifestyle, attitude, and or urban individuality. Hip-hop at its core, not the commercialization and commodity it has become in certain respects, rejects dominant forms of culture and society and seeks to increase a social consciousness along with a racial and ethnic pride. Thus, hip-hop uses rap music, dance, and music production, MC, and allegory as vehicles to send and fund its message of social, cultural, and political resistance to dominant structures of norms. This is the definition I'm using. So let me hop to the point here as I start thinking about, again, I know my time is short, as I start thinking about what hip-hop is. When you're using these definitions of hip-hop, using these definitions of the post-civil rights context, I would make the argument that hip-hop actually provides the space, venue, context, and freedom to create a leadership and ethic in a post-civil rights era. Hip-hop provides these spaces because it is this creative, it is this malleable, it is this liquid, if you will. Hip-hop is one of the few genres that you can take into almost any culture, and it becomes contextualized, it becomes rooted in that. When you think about the uprisings in Egypt, when you think about the uprisings in Iraq, hip-hop was at the center of that, and it provided context, it provided space, it provided a voice, it provided room for people to begin to ask, where is God in all of this? Where is my own identity in all of this? Hip-hop also creates a theological space for post-civil rights youth and young adults to really express themselves. And what I mean by this, I know there's some religious language in there, but let me show you what I mean by that. There are 5 theological motifs within a hip-hop culture: a theology of suffering, theology of community, a theology of the hip-hop Jesus, a theology of social action and social justice, and a theology of the profane. Within these 5 theological motifs, hip-hop provides, again, the space for young people to engage with and to begin to see the world in a different space. Not only that, but to begin to create aspects of society, begin to create a space for those to better understand what life is about from the margins. When we think about it, the margins have created some of the best minds that we have. When you think about somebody like a Martin Luther King comes from the margins. When you think about somebody like a Tupac Shakur, he comes from the margins. When you think about somebody like an Angela Davis, she came from the margins. She came from those corners of the oppressed. And hip-hop culture is able to embody those things without saying, well, let's get dressed up first. Let's have you speak better. Let's have you get cleaned up. Hip-hop says, come as you are. And in this generation, there is nothing more powerful than saying, I accept you as is. Not what we hope you can become, not what we think you can become, but as is. So that's my pitch. That is what I'm thinking about in regards to hip hop, and what I hope to provide you guys with this venue is to begin to show you that hip hop is much larger than what we see on the radio. So here's my contact information. My two most current books, The Soul of Hip Hop and Hip Hop's Hostile Gospel, which was just released last year, gets into obviously these areas much broader and much deeper, but this is the pitch that I'm trying to make to you all as the TEDx committee, to begin to look at hip hop much broader, and to begin to use hip hop and to look at hip hop to engage aspects of STEM, aspects of life, and engaging dimensions of racism, sexism, homophobia, and xenophobia, particularly in this era of 45's reign. We have to begin to understand that the methods of old will not work in the post-civil rights generation. So this is who I am. I hope you liked it, and thank you so much. Peace.